The education of Africa's rising middle class has been described as a fantastic investment opportunity by a number of investment managers that have joined us on the show. The Lereko Metier Capital Growth Fund has recently taken active steps to exploit this opportunity by acquiring tertiary education services company IMM for 200 million rand. Delane van Sale joins us in studio to talk us through the transaction and their plans for the business. Thanks for joining us, Delane.
Thank you, Warren.
So IMM, I think many marketing graduates know what IMM is. Just take us through what the company actually does at the moment, and then we can talk a little bit about the rationale for investing in this business.
Absolutely. So IMM is a tertiary distance education company. Currently services approximately 6,000 students a year, and focuses on the working adult demographic. So not necessarily school leavers, but people who have been working a little bit and wanting to improve their lives and improve their careers and looking for a distance learning opportunity. And we do focus on the marketing side of education, but the course is a little bit more general and general business degree with an emphasis on marketing rather than specializing in marketing. It has a little bit of an Africa reach, got some students in Zimbabwe, and we're actively expanding in other parts of Africa, and we feel like this business has a lot of scope on that dimension.
When we say distance education, just to get this right, I mean, many people are familiar with Varsity College, which, as I understand it, teaches a UNISA syllabus to pupils in a classroom or lecture setting. IMM, is it in charge of its own, the own content of its courses, its own syllabus?
Yes. So IMM would be the UNISA in that equation. There are also what we call student support centers or additional tuition centers that can teach towards the IMM curricula. That's not something we focus on. We focus more on the content, delivery of that content in a distance format. That can currently, it takes the form of books and posting books, but obviously gradually moving into the e-platform type learning.
This is not something that's just specific to South Africa and Africa at this point. I mean, we've seen, I regularly get emails to be invited to online MBA courses run from American universities, from places like Liverpool University. So this is a big trend. Why specifically were you drawn to IMM?
So IMM satisfied for us, or maybe we take a step back, I think private equity has certain needs, and the private equity capital is suited to certain parts of the education value chain and not others. I think there's the distance learning in particular has an interesting investment returns, but there's also a nice nexus and sort of call it the holy grail of social. We're fulfilling a social need and also investment returns, and we feel that distance education with its low reinvestment rates, relatively high margins, that we could play a value added role in that part of the value chain. We spent about a year and a half looking for attractive investments, and we came across IMM through our network, and it fulfilled this criteria of individual fee-paying students, which we also like. It's an endorsement. Every student is paying his or her own money to study at IMM. It's not subsidized. It's not sort of corporate sponsorship where it's easy to make the decision. It has its own content and its own delivery channel, and it's got a sort of 40-50 year track record, and those features we thought were interesting and satisfied sort of our, like I say, our investment returns, but also we thought we could do something really good with the business and a social level as well.
And that's a fundamental factor, I think, of fundamental feature of private equity firms, is that you can really change management, you get involved with the strategy, involved in the actual operations, and keep a close eye on the operations to a degree that public investors like mutual funds or unit trust funds don't. I wanted to ask you specifically just around the transaction itself. The briefing said it was 200 million rand you've acquired the company for. Just take us through what you want to do, the infrastructure rollout and some of the things you want to change. Are there additional amounts of capital that you're going to be putting into that? And then what are the returns you're expecting from this project?
Absolutely. So the 200 million was the total capital we raised for this plan of ours. Less than that, sort of 60% of that was deployed in IMM. So we actually do have a little bit of capital that we can spend on follow-on acquisitions or investment opportunities. So we have that in place. We think that 200 million is potentially not going to be enough, and at a second phase we could raise additional capital. So what are we doing with that money? What are our plans? The original entrepreneur is still involved with the business. However, we've put in a sort of a corporate CEO to to take it to the next level, we think, and bring a new set of skills, maybe corporatize the business a bit more. Together with him, we intend to drive our Africa strategy very hard. We've engaged with, or we're in the process of signing up partners in Nigeria, Zambia, and Ghana. And we hope to have semester 1 in 2014. We hope to have our first students coming out of those 3 countries. That's probably our biggest focus. A second focus would be developing our e-platform and getting it out there on what we call blended learning. So I think there'll always be a need for paper and books. There'll always be a little bit of a need for face-to-face, but supplementing that with the right amount of e-content, if you could call it that.
Now, there is an elephant in the room, and that's UNISA.
Yes.
What makes you think, and why has this business been able to compete with the likes of UNISA, which I think follows a very similar model, and I think perhaps by the sounds of things are a little bit further down the line with their e-commerce. I think everything's offered online, and all the assignments are done online and that sort of thing. So what makes the niche? Where do you compete in that scope?
No, that's a good question. I think there are 2 factors. The one is UNISA has, it's one of the biggest distance learning institutions in the world, in fact, and I think it has around 350,000 students, if I have my numbers right. They are with respect, bursting at the seams to some extent. In fact, their call center has been shut down in that you can now only email questions and contact your lecturer or whoever by email. We don't think that type of service level is necessarily good for everyone, and we obviously offer a lot more an intimate experience, and we feel better service on that level. In addition to that, what IMM represents is at its heart is an institute where members who are passionate about marketing come together and talk and learn and share ideas, and from that develop the education business. We still have that at our core, so we feel we're closer to industry, being the marketing industry, than any of these sort of academic institutions. So we find that we call it industry recognized degrees, and so we have our alumni are all over the top positions in banks, in telecommunications, obviously in food and beverage, etc., with senior positions there, and we still have linkages with them, and that keeps our industry links strong. And I think that's borne out by the fact that when a student chooses to do a marketing degree, they often choose us because ultimately you want to get a better job and a better life, and that all factors into their decision-making process. And when you can see a road to IMM through to industry, a job, we think that enhances our offering.
One of the areas I wanted to ask you about is obviously, and this seems to be a big thing in the States, is student lending and lending money to students to put themselves through varsity. Is that a complementary product that would be included in your offering?
Yes, most private distance education companies do offer some form of credit, either within the business or sometimes outsourced. We don't do that. It is a possible route we could go down. However, at the moment, we feel it would, we feel that a student, we feel it enhances our reputation where students who can study, who have the means, enrolling in our course. And we're not going down that road of extending credit. We think it's a slippery slope where you start to sell too much, getting people to sign up and potentially fall out because they can't pay, and then having a bad debt on your books. So we are currently 100% cash up front.
Okay, we've got just time for 1 or 2 more questions. You said you wanted to make 3 times the money on your capital invested in this business, which equates to an IRR of 30%. How long do you anticipate holding this company for, and will it become a public company in the future?
Yes, we think we can achieve those targets. It's got great cash flows. We can return the capital quite quickly if we want to, or deploy it in other opportunities. I think an IPO is definitely a possibility. This idea of for-profit education is something one will have to wrestle with at the time. But I think this has got a long road to run in private hands, and we think that there's a sort of what we call a next lap. So I think once we're done with our plans, which we're targeting at 5 years, we think there's potentially another financial or private equity buyer that could take it for a next lap before a potential IPO. The most likely buyer for this business, we think, would probably be a trade buyer. There are lots of international people like Apollo or Pearson who would be very interested in a business with the Africa footprint that we intend to have in 3 to 5 years.